So this is really unplanned, but I've had a few comments posted online recently about the Hermes SDR and Quisk and how to run FT8 or JS8Call. So I thought, as I've just finished a stream this evening using both, well, Hermes, Quisk and JS8Call, maybe now would be a good time just to show the setup, which is really quite simple. I say simple, but maybe simple for me, I don't know. I've been playing with this stuff for some time. So the desktop you're currently seeing is showing JS8Call running on Linux, although it's really irrelevant what it's running under. And in the background there, I've got Quisk. So first thing we need to look at is Quisk. And the refresh rate there is slow just because I'm saving bandwidth. All of this is running over the network. I've got the Hermes SDR on the network. I've got the laptop that's running this on the network. This is my desktop. It's gigabit network, but still when you're streaming a huge amount of bandwidth like I am on the SDR, and you're running remote desktop or VNC and everything else, it's better to reduce the frame rate if not needed. So yeah, this is Quisk. And if I look in the config, you can see it's capturing the IQ stream from the Hermes device, which is sat on the network, and the MAC address is shown there. So in terms of configuring the Hermes, if I just expand this, of course the problem with running over VNC is things are a bit laggy, but there we go. I'll just maximize this window. There's not a huge amount to change here. If you check on the Quisk or Hermes Lite wiki or the mail groups, it goes through some of these things. Initial LNA setting should not be 20, should be about 10. TX power I just have at 100. I'm no longer running a linear amplifier, so 100% power is about 5 watts. Power amp is enabled, and I don't think there's much more to this from memory. The sound devices under Linux, I'm just using Pulse, so I can redirect it where I want from Pulse. The radio sound is currently, it would be sent to the laptop, but of course I'm running this remotely, so I don't actually care. But the main things to be aware of here is in the external digital in and out for FT8 or JS8Call. So what Quisk does, at least under Linux, I think this is maybe a bit more complicated under Windows, but when Quisk starts under Linux, under Pulse Audio, it creates a couple of virtual interfaces. So it's like having a traditional desktop radio that has a sound card connected to it, only the sound card is built in, a virtual sound card, virtual device, on the machine that's running it. And I've just realized that I still have these things enabled, which I don't actually want. They just get in the way, so I'll move them down there for now. But yeah, so you have the input and output, basically, the audio interface. May not make much sense now, but bear with me, and we'll return to that in a minute. So none of this I think is important for now. It is if you're doing other things, but in terms of basic controls, this is the graph, the refresh rate. I'm only refreshing 2 times a second to save bandwidth, as I said. If you increase this to 5 or even 10, it's a lot smoother when you see the graph there. None of this really matters, apart from when you get to bands. This again is covered online. You have your bits which are set for the bandpass filters on the Hermes Lite. So I have the N2 NDR, is it? Filter board, the filter board that's available for the Hermes Lite. And these are the bits that you need to set in order to engage the correct filters on the various HF bands. And you can enable or disable the bands here. I used to do this. In fact, I probably still should, because my antenna is resonant on 80, 40, 20, 17, and 10. Supposedly 15, but there's a slight problem with the SWR high on 40, so it's knocking 15 out a bit as well. So yeah, that's Quisk. And you can go back to the graph, or the graph and the waterfall. But I'm using the waterfall on the JS8 interface, so I'm not too worried about that. So JS8Call. The only thing to show you here is, well, actually there's 2 things. I could go through all the settings, but I've already got a blog post detailing how to configure this for sensible options for auto-responding to heartbeat calls and auto-responding to requests for SNR and stuff like that. If you look at my blog, it's no, it's not. It's M0SPN Mike 0 Sierra Papa November.co.uk. I think it's now also available under OH3SPN.FI. That's Oscar Hotel 3 Sierra Papa November .Foxtrot India, but I'm not 100% if that's working yet. So yeah, if you want to look at how to set this up for all the automatic functions and to decode multiple speeds at the same time, have a look at that blog post. But in terms of Quisk, under audio, these are the devices that Quisk creates under Linux. So the input to JS8 is the output from Quisk, and the output from JS8Call is the input to Quisk. So it is pretty straightforward, even if perhaps a little bit confusing at first. The only other thing I can't remember is how I'm doing cat. Am I using cat? I think I am, but I'm using the network device, which is actually a very good question. You see, I said there's no preparation for this video, and you can see there isn't. Let's go back to Quisk, back to config. Somewhere here there is IP address for hamlib. I believe this is talking via cat. Well, it must be, because there's no other. I did have this set up as a virtual device. I was trying to do... Oh, there we go. Now it's complaining. I was trying to do emulated data set ready or ready to send emulation, but that was not working for some reason. But I'm now concerned that I've actually... Oh no, this is still working, so it must be using... It must be using cat over... Yeah, B to T method, cat. Yeah, I'm using cat, but it's over the network device rather than a serial device. And to be honest, I configured this some time ago. When I first got the Hermes, I was playing with FT8. And I figured this out, and I've kept the configuration file, and if I moved laptops or reinstall somewhere else, that configuration file is just in my home directory, and it just picks it up and works. And exactly the same for JS8Call. This laptop was recently reinstalled. It's running the recent Ubuntu 20.04. I had to compile the latest JS8Call from source. I think I installed Quisk using the Python installation tool pip. Had a little bit of difficulty, but again, all the configuration lives in my home directory. So once I've got the software installed, I start it and it just works, which is kind of nice. So if I go back to the graph, I need to resize some of this and I can show you this working. Now, I must say, Quisk itself looks really basic. And I know there's a lot of people that appear to be resistant to using it. And I guess it does look quite antiquated. It looks quite nerdy. It's really basic, but the functionality is fantastic. Everything about it is awesome. It just works. There's no problems at all. It's got MIDI control of CW, which is really responsive. If you're doing 30, 40 words per minute, maybe you'll notice a few microseconds lag. But if you're running the sort of speed I run, which is 10 to 15 words per minute on a good day, it's perfect. And the filters in Quisk are really, really good. And I recently bought an ICOM 7300. The filters in Quisk are actually better. And working with the Hermes Lite SDR2, the front end appears better. It's incredible how a £200 or €250, whatever it is, SDR that's based on a cable modem or ADSL modem chip seems to be better than the ICOM 7300, which I know is, I keep reading it's a budget introduction type radio, but it's over €1,000. And I've switched back to the Hermes because to me, the Hermes is better. The AGC, the automatic gain control is better. The handling of strong signals is better. I know some of this is down to Quisk as well, but Quisk is open source software. I mean, it's open for anyone. Anyone can look at how this is written. So I don't understand why the 7300 struggles so much in the presence of strong signals, and especially strong signals just outside the passband. Whereas the Hermes, absolutely no problem. I can have a narrow passband, and I can have a strong signal S9 plus 40 dB outside that passband. And the signal inside the passband, perfectly legible. No distortion, no obliteration of the front end. But I just cannot recommend the Hermes enough. But anyway, I digress. I'll go back to JS8Call here. You can see with the... Oh, I do have this set high. That shouldn't be so high. About 10 or 15 dB is usually enough on the gain on the Hermes, dependent on the band and how the antenna is performing. But yeah, we can see on Quisk, you can see the spectrum there. Let's have a look at this. I don't know whether this will work. I'm going to try and increase the scope, the refresh rate. No, it won't work because I've got to restart. Forget that. I just wanted to give you a better experience of what it actually looks like when you're using the software on a real desktop, as opposed to a VNC or RDP session, but don't worry about that. So you see the spectrum on Quisk. I'm zoomed in partly here. This is the JS8Call spectrum, and you can see the same spectrum on the JS8Call client. So if I hit, I'll move off that frequency because someone else was just there. If I hit tune on JS8Call, you can see on Quisk, you have the carrier. This is in full duplex, by the way. You don't normally need to do that, and you wouldn't want to do that if you had audio connected, because this would effectively deafen you. But it's interesting here for demonstration. So that's the carrier. And you can see down here the temperature of the Hermes is 42 degrees. The current is about 1.6 amps to the final. It's producing about 4.9 watts output into an SWR of about 1.5 to 1. So the band is not in a good condition. It's what, 840 here in local time, and 40 meters is starting to look pretty poor, to be honest. The last couple of hours it was very active, but not so much now. But let's try send the heartbeat. And we'll see what happens. So on Quisk here, you can see the carrier. Well, the carrier. And the modulated carrier, I should say. You can see the modulated carrier. And just as JS8Call switches back, I think because it's full duplex, you just get to see a very brief section of the transmitted audio. And here on Quisk, you can see a modulated carrier there, and you can see the same on the waterfall here. I could only see one, but two responded. EI2GYB, who's a packet station, who also runs JS8. He's on 24/7 in Ireland, and a very good EU node for leaving messages for others. And LB3SH. LB3SH. Move this down a bit. Minus 15 dB. And he can hear me minus 14, so that's fairly equal both ways. LB3SH. Norway, okay. Fairly close. I'm in Finland, as you can guess by the call sign. Yeah, some of these calls still confuse me. I've been operating amateur radio for 10 years, roughly. And LB, I know LA. LA is Norway, but I see these call signs LB. It's only one letter different, and for a moment there, I'm thinking, where is LB? But yeah, so I don't know what else to show you, really. I typically, if I'm not doing voice or FT8, the Hermes is usually online while I'm at home which due to coronavirus is pretty much 24/7. I was online 24/7 as a major node in Europe for a couple of months. I was running the Hermes SDR and about 20 to 30 watts from a home-built, well, Chinese kit that was home-built and modified. The kit cost about €15 and develops about 70 watts output, but with a few modifications to present a better input SWR and low-pass filter to clean up the output. I was comfortably producing about 20 or 30 watts, and this was on the air for a couple of months. So my call sign was quite well known on JS8Call, but the problem with the Chinese linears is there's no output protection. And my dipole was strung up in the air with string, thin string. We had a couple of gales, a couple of storms here in Finland, and on a couple of occasions the support string snapped and the antenna ended up, at least half of it, on the ground. SWR of above 3:1, and the little amplifier continued working surprisingly well until the finals cooked themselves. And on the first occasion I found that the constant heating and cooling cycles of the linear and the heatsink, the bolts attaching the final transistors to the heatsink loosened. And when I took it apart to work out what had happened, it's no surprise that they failed. It was loose. It was really loose. There was hardly any tightness keeping the transistors in close contact with the heatsink. But anyway, even when that was fixed, there was a couple of other stormy days, stormy nights, and the dipole fell down. And again, over prolonged use, the finals cooked themselves. So yeah, I disconnected that and it was offline for a month or so. I then bought the 7300 thinking, wow, awesome, fantastic radio. But as I've mentioned, there's flaws. I guess I should go into more detail as I'm here waffling and talking about this, but I'm lucky. I live in Finland. I live on the outskirts of a small town. I have a very, very exceedingly low noise floor. So the problems with the front end on the front end and the filters, or the filters, I'm not sure exactly what it is, on the IC7300 is basically if you have a weak signal in your passband, a strong signal outside your passband, it completely destroys it. Destroys the weak signal. And everyone on the Facebook groups, they're like, oh, you should learn how to use your RF gain control. Really? Okay, so I hit the RF gain control. I reduce the input to the receiver. Great. The problem signal is now no longer a problem. But the weak signal that I can barely hear down in amongst the noise that was copyable is now not copyable. So sure, if you're working a signal that's S5 and you've got an S9 plus signal adjacent, back off the RF gain, no problem at all. But if you're working something below S0 and you've got a S9 plus station, I don't know, maybe I'm just expecting too much, but my old ICOM FT847, which had a really mediocre HF receiver, let's face it, it was aimed as VHF, UHF satellite box, which it was also very, very good at. But with traditional filters on the HF side, it worked really well. I know it's perhaps not the most sensitive, and it worked really well for me. So that's what I came from, an 847 with a mediocre non-SDR receiver with real filters. Didn't have this problem. The Hermes is a €200 SDR. I don't have this problem. And I know that's cheating because there's a £1,000, dollar, euro laptop connected to it, and most of this is done in software. But still, it's open source software, it's free, it's a €200 SDR. I don't have this problem. So I've kind of gone back to the Hermes, which is ridiculous when you think about it. But that's how things are. And the Hermes does have downsides. On the software side, it's reliant on the PC, and there's positives here. Under Linux on the PC side, you can, under Pulse Audio, you can create a loopback audio interface. There's pulse effects, you can do EQ, you can do compression, you can do gate. You can do all sorts of things on the audio side that is effectively the same as having a whole load of outboard gear, audio gear, which is really, really awesome when it works. But I had a couple of occasions with the Hermes where people were reporting they had trouble hearing me, and after a bit of investigation I realized that Pulse Audio had somehow got confused, and I don't know whether it was Pulse Audio itself or Pulse Effects, but something was adding a huge amount of distortion to the audio. Now, I could restart Pulse and the problem usually wouldn't go away. I could disable the effects, Pulse Effects, and the problem would usually not go away. Disable Pulse Effects, restart Pulse, usually no difference. The only thing that would fix this was a reboot, which is a horrible, horrible Windows-like approach to this. And it did drive me nuts, which is why I thought I'll order a traditional desktop radio. And rather than buy something used that is a traditional transceiver, given my great experience with the Hermes, I thought I'd buy an SDR-based modern transceiver. Because come on, the Hermes is €200. A radio costing over 1,000 is going to be at least as good, right? Well, I'm still struggling to feel that way. As much as I like it, and I like the controls, I like the interface, I like having the waterfall, although I generally don't use it. It's nice to see the activity on the band, but normally I just end up switching back to the power, SWR, compression, mic input levels, because I find that more useful. It's nice having the notch function. The notch function is great. It's a nice radio. There's a few problems I have where there's things that are multiple touches. You have to touch the screen 2 times, then fiddle with the multi-control. Again, going back to the FT847, there's more knobs. Much more of it is hands-on. There's not kind of menu diving. Oh, the other thing with the 7300, not that I wanted to turn this into a bitch fest about the 7300, but when it's on power save mode, when the screen goes blank, that's great, because I'm running with software in the background. Every time the software transmits, or there's a change in the frequency or something, I think, the radio wakes up, the screen is back on. Now, if I was using this for any length of time doing data, the screen would be backlit 12 hours a day. If I leave this running overnight, which I do, on JS8Call, I mean, I'm still... I don't leave the house at the moment due to coronavirus, so the radio is always monitored. Either through the laptop, remote BNC session or whatever. But I'm worried about the screen and the backlight and how quickly this will fail. And if the radio is powered on 24 hours a day and every time there's transmit, it wakes up the screen, it just feels like I'm waiting for that screen to fail prematurely. I don't know. But yes. I know friends are thinking I'm moaning. I buy an expensive radio and moan, but it's kind of difficult not to when you're comparing it with a radio that was made in, what, the late 90s, the 847? No, it was early 90s, wasn't it? I forget. Let's have a look. Can I temporarily disable these? I don't know. The trouble is I don't want to delete them. I wonder if I can move them down there. I don't want to delete them because the software I use to do this, OBS, has changed the interface. And if I delete them, I then can't get them back with the shadow effect. So it means they blend into... right, that's not what I want. Oh, that's interesting. I thought I was only broadcasting... I thought I was only broadcasting the... Right, let's see. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. Oh, new message received. Okay, it's a COVID update. There's a regular net here in Europe, a call sign CV19, which I think was started by Julian, OH8 STN, I think it is. And a lot of people have adopted this. And it's just updates on COVID. And to be honest, people were laughing online, people on the Facebook groups, especially those in America, saying, oh, this is ridiculous. Why do we need this? We can just switch on the news. To be honest, I moved to Finland. I hear about cases in Finland. I don't hear about cases in the UK, and certainly not Ireland and Norway. And yes, I do find this interesting. So, anyway, I digress. What I was looking for is FT847. What year was the 847 made? I think it was early 90s. Rig reference, will that give me the date? No indication of the date. By the way, I'm hoping this stream is okay. I've not really checked any of this. The previous streams I did were just video. None of my terrible voice. So yeah, I've not checked the mic levels or anything. So apologies if there's anything wrong. I'll probably check this afterwards and then use this as a reason to assess things and try and improve. I'm still not seeing release date. It can't be this difficult, surely. 1998 to 2005. Okay. So yeah, I'm comparing the ICOM 7300 against a radio that was released in 1998. And a radio that didn't have a great reputation for HF performance. And well, admittedly it didn't. It had bad HF performance until I fitted that filter. I think it was a 2300 hertz, 2.3 kilohertz. It may have been 2.7 or 2.6. I can't remember. I think it was the standard Yaesu component, not the INRAD. And as soon as I fitted that filter, the selectivity at the front end is just massively improved. And I think it uses one for transmit as well. Is it one for transmit, one for receive, or does it use the same one for both, like the 817? But anyway, fantastic. Used it happily. No problem at all. It had the DSP as well, which was not perfect. But the combination of the traditional filter plus the DSP made it quite a nice radio to operate. And I have... When I visited England last, I brought back an ICOM 706, and that also has the narrow SSB filter fitted. And it's not such a great radio, but then it is compact. But even so, I haven't noticed the issue with strong adjacent stations destroying the front end. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think. As much as I do think the 7300 is an awesome radio, and I realise it's targeted at newcomers. I think it's advertised as like a budget introduction SDR radio. And the 7610, is the big brother, which has a better receiver performance. I would be really interested to try that. I mean, it could just be that my scenario, I guess most people don't have such a low noise floor. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe there's something specific about my setup here. And of course I use the RF gain. Of course I know how to do these things. I've been doing this for years. I've been on HF for years. You know, maybe there is some misunderstanding of mine. Maybe there's something I could be doing better. But as an example, on the 7300, if you're working data, you really need to switch off the AGC, because even when the automatic gain control is on fast, a strong station anywhere on the band, and I'm talking anywhere on the band, weak stations gone completely. You can look at the waterfall, and if there's a strong station at one side of the band, everything is just vanished, totally gone. And I really struggled with this at first, and I must admit, on the Facebook ICOM 7300 group, I posted saying, what the hell is going on here? I've spent all this money on this radio and it's trash. Every time there's a strong signal, the front end just terrible, terrible, terrible. And people very quickly responded with a, read the effing manual. Well, not RTFM as such, but check the pinned post in the group. If you're running JS8 or FT8, you need to switch off the AGC. Which I've never switched off the AGC before when running JS8 or FT8. I've never had this problem before. Why do I need to do it? Fine, anyway, great. Switch it off. Problem solved. Or so I thought. Problem solved until, I mean, again, this may not be typical, maybe more in the US. I live in Finland. We have land. People have towers. People have beams. I live within 10, 20 miles of other amateurs with HF beams. I don't have a beam, I just have a dipole. But even, I mean, some of the stations I checked, they're elsewhere in Finland. Some of them were Estonia, Norway, on voice, not even, you know, data modes. With the AGC switched off, any strong station on the band, front end, goodbye. Distortion, noise, absolute clipping. Then I'm back to hitting the RF gain, and I'm dropping the RF gain down, and suddenly those stations that I was copying perfectly at minus 22 dB on JS8 are now no longer there. But I should shut up, because I am happy with the radio. It's great for voice. For voice, it's perfect. The audio is punchy. I'm using a... Everyone says ICOM 7300 must use a condenser mic, must use an Electret mic, must use... Do not use a dynamic mic. You end up having the mic gain on 100%, and you've got all these settings boosted up, and you've got compression enabled more as a higher level, and just do not do it. So, me being me and me liking my dynamic microphones, I thought, what the hell? Get a cable, hook it up. What's the worst that can happen? I end up replacing it with a different mic. No problem at all. Fantastic audio reports. I recorded myself on Hat Green SDR, doing an audio check, comparing between the stock hand mic, which is awesome, but it's a hand mic, which I hate, and a cheap dynamic mic on a boom, which is a much more convenient, and a home-built DIY PTT switch with a toggle switch to lock it on as well. really very little difference. I can't tell any difference. I've got the mic gain on 100%. Yeah, maybe that's not ideal, but it works perfectly. I've got compression on about 3 or 4. Again, it works perfectly. And I can't really tell the difference in the audio quality between the dynamic mic and the hand mic. So, yeah, it works. It works perfectly. It's a cheap dynamic mic. I have a better dynamic mic, which I'm now recording on, but my radio mic is a cheap dynamic mic. I think it is made by Cord. It was bought from eBay. It's probably made in China. It cost about £15 when I was in the UK. And it has a better frequency response than Shure, AKG, Behringer. There was another one I bought. I've bought many dynamic mics, and for radio, the Cord DM01, I think it is, has far superior, punchier audio with much more top end, much more clarity without needing external processing or effects. And I think I've got a review of that mic, including some recordings taken via Hack Green. I made this when I was back in the UK, but the mic was so good that on my last visit I picked it up and brought it over with me, and it's now doing a fantastic job on the 7300 just as well as it did on the 847. So when was the 706 made? I'm curious now. I wonder whether I can fake that URL. ICOM IC706.htm, was it? I can't remember. Yeah, guessed it correctly. So, where's the release date? 1995. So the ICOM 706 was even older than the 847. And yeah, with the proper filter fitted, it performed very well. And I must say, talking of filters, I have an FT817 as well. And the front end on that, well, I mean, it was a barn door. It was wide open. Tried using it for a couple of contests, QRP, and useless. Absolutely useless. Any strong signals adjacent, they'd just noise. So tiring to listen to. Fitted the Yaesu filter, and what an improvement. Absolute improvement. Can't describe what improvement it made. And of course on the 817 the filter is in the TX side as well. So not only did it improve reception significantly, it also gave me much tighter audio on the TX side, which made it narrower, punchier, and higher signal on the receive on the remote station hearing me. So filters, traditional filters were awesome. DSP filters, at least on a modern FPGA, I just don't think they're there yet. And again, the filters on Quisk. Filters on Quisk are phenomenal, but it's open source. Probably lots of contributors, lots of thought has gone into the design of them, and it's cheating. It's running on a modern PC, which has a Core whatever Intel CPU and has a whole load of horsepower under the bonnet to do DSP magic, whereas an FPGA, I guess, is still somewhat limited. Although FPGAs can be quite specialist in this regard, so maybe it's just poorly implemented, I don't know. Sorry, Yaesu. Sorry, ICOM. ICOM. I don't know. Anyway, this was meant to be an introduction to JS8Call and Quisk and the Hermes Lite SDR, but it's turned into a comparison of the 847, 7300, 706 and the Hermes Lite SDR. And I've done no real operating on JS8Call. But I think that's all there is to it. But I'll mention as I'm on, while I'm doing this, we've got the at least in Europe, we've got the CV19 net, which is for coronavirus updates. As I say, I think it was started by Julian 0H8 STN. It was very quickly taken up by, I can't remember his name now. Did I put a comment in that? No, I forget. EI2GYB. He was sending updates. I think it was EI2GYB from Ireland. And we've had updates recently as well from Norway, FO8BNK/LA Mike has been giving updates from Norway, all sent to the CV19 call group. We also have NordNet, which I think was a suggestion by Julian, and I've not actually seen this used, as far as I'm aware. But I do actually have something maybe interesting to show you on this as well, if I remember correctly. But the other call group I've got configured is at Retro. Now there's, I've realized this, there's a whole load of amateur radio operators that are also into retro computing. Be that in Europe, Commodore Amiga, Atari ST, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, Sinclair, BBC, MSX, probably forgotten others. In the US, I know it's mostly Apple PET, Commodore, Commodore PET, isn't it? What am I saying? Commodore PET. The Apple II GS, is it? I don't know. I'm European and we didn't really have these things here, so anyway, yeah, there's a number of amateur radio operators that are also into retro computing. We have a big demo scene in Europe where people write demonstration demos, I guess, for these old machines to show off what they can do with old technology. And I created the at Retro call group, and we've had a little bit of activity on that. Not as much as I would like. I started using it and then my node went offline, so it's not been particularly active. But I tend to take any interesting news that I see from the retro computing scene and send it out to at Retro on JS8Call. And I'm hoping this will take off. I'm hoping a few more will get into this. There's quite a big community, I think, in the States as well, with retro computing and arcade fans that also cross over into amateur radio and JS8. And why not? If you're interested in any of this old tech, then start using the retro call, put out a CQ call to the retro call group, or start posting bulletins, anything interesting in your area or news about new hardware, send it to at Retro. But yes, what I wanted to show you, this is turning into a real long session of anything and everything. But my appropriately named radio laptop. If you're interested, if you run a node 24/7 and you're not always there actively monitoring, I would say, like checking all messages that come in. I mean, I just keep an eye on it. I check that the Hermes hasn't gone into some sort of weird, I mean, it never has done this, but it's never stuck in TX. There's a watchdog timer anyway. But I do just keep an eye on it throughout the day and throughout the night. And usually I'm checking for messages. I get a few messages left for me, so I'm usually checking regularly. Incidentally, send me a message. Leave me a message on EI2GYB's node, or 0H8 STN, or F08BNK/LA, or my own node. I'm only running 5 watts, but I seem to have good coverage of Europe most of the day on 40 meters. So yeah, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll give you a response, always. But let's just see what we have. I didn't mean to do that. You wouldn't think I've been working with Linux for this long. What I want to do is I just want to... There's an FT or JS8 directory. and all messages received to all call groups. I now can't find it. Maybe it's in .local or .share. Maybe .local.share. .local.call. Sorry, .local share JS8Call. So this is where all messages end up. Now there's a couple of files here. I think it's directed that we're interested in. So these are all messages that are directed at particular stations. Is this what I'm looking for? I think it is. So if I want to check I must admit, I apologise, it's late in the evening. I may have had a couple of beers and my VNC session is lagging. So I'm excusing my poor typing and stupid mistakes. But if I want to look at what's been sent to CV19, I'm doing -I because I don't want it case sensitive, but I don't think it really matters because everything in JS8Call is uppercase anyway. So yeah, this is all the messages that have been received on this newly rebuilt laptop. It's only been rebuilt a couple of days. So I can see all the updates sent to that. So I'm thinking ahead of myself here. So there's been 28 messages sent to CV19 in the last couple of days. But I could also, if I want to see how many messages have been sent to everyone. Oh, this is really laggy for some reason. Messages sent, so I want the... Oh, that's interesting. I see FO... Oh, it's FO6BNK. Did I say FO6BNK or FO8BNK /LA? It's Mike. He's been sending messages to Raynet as well. Interesting. So... If the message sent is generally to the second field, then I can extract that second field and make a typo again, because that's what I do when it's this time in the evening. Why is that not working? What am I doing wrong? See, this is embarrassing now. I work with Linux for a living, and I can't remember the awk syntax. Have I done that? I blame the alcohol for this, and I'm still making mistakes. No, I'm sure that's the wrong way around. What am I doing? See, this is where I should really stop the stream and actually... This is too slow to type. I wonder why this is. I wonder if it's because of that. No, it's still very slow. Yeah, it's going to complain now. I don't know why, but if you stop Quisk, it then can't talk anymore via cat. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. No, it's still not working. Oh, of course, because it's not the second field, is it? But that should still return something. Oh, okay. I do this every day as part of my job. And it is. Oh, I'm forgetting the print. God. You wouldn't believe this, would you? So yeah, that's all the specific fields that things have been sent to. I think I'm only interested in the call groups. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that's heartbeat all call. Basically, you can. What I'm trying to say is, you can look back. If you've missed a message, you can look back in these logs, and you can also do this where you can then check how many messages to each. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing a useless use of cat, basically listing the log file for all directed messages. I'm then grabbing the field that has the useful call sign group. Oh, there's two there to retro. I thought there wasn't any to retro, and yet I'm seeing some. So, log file, I'm taking the 7th field, which has the useful 2 call sign group. I'm then filtering anything that's got an @ sign, so I only want the things with the @ sign. I'm then sorting them, which prepares them in the order you see here. I'm then using the command unique, which only takes 1 copy of each, but they need to be in sorted order in order for unique to do its magic. And then I'm doing a word count, but I'm passing it the -L option, which only counts the number of lines, which, as we've already run unique, I'm talking this through and I'm realizing I'm doing this wrong. Word count -L for lines is not correct. We can get unique to do a count. So there we see. Do I even need to do the sort? I don't think I do. Yes, I do. Otherwise, it's getting things out of order. So I'm doing a sort. I'm then doing a unique count. So that's reporting the number of incidents of each call group. And then I want to sort them numerically, because the first column that you see in the list above here is the number of incidents of each call. So I want to sort those by number, and I may want to reverse that. No, right. So in the last few days, you can see there's been 18,000 heartbeat requests, 7,605 to all call, which is probably mostly CQs, 579 to the APRS service gate, 25 to field day. I haven't seen any of those. 24 to COVID-19. Some more ARF. I'm guessing that's like RainNet or emergency. I can't remember. ARF? ARFnet. ARFnet. That is not the DMX lighting control. ARF. Amateur radio respondent of something, isn't it? ARF. ARF ham radio net. Antique. I don't know. That's not what I thought. I thought it was something else. Call sign group for call sign. That's strange. G90. I know there's a few users of the G90 transceiver, so that makes sense. Skywarn. Retro. I'm interested in these retro ones. Who's been using that, I wonder? Interesting, interesting. Nordnet. London. I'm finding this really interesting because I haven't seen all of these used, and maybe looking through this, I'm seeing maybe some more that I would want to subscribe to. Okay then. Who has been... Mike, FO6BNK, wondering who's listening. Sending a heartbeat and requesting grid. Interesting, interesting. I wonder if there's anyone else listening now. If I restart Quisk, I'll move that down to the bottom of the screen. I don't normally do this, but if I'm doing a video, then it makes sense to make things tidy. I don't need Quisk visible at all. JS8Call. I should do a video one day going through the build of JS8Call and WSJTX on the latest Ubuntu, because there's currently no packages available. Not for the latest versions anyway. I'm sure they will be soon, but it did take a little bit of effort to get these things built. So I wonder, retro. Can I just do a heartbeat to retro like that? Yes, I can. And I'm in fast mode, which was a mistake. And I can't change that until I stop transmitting. But we'll see. But yeah, the Hermes and Quisk is, the data modes is just fantastic. Much less hassle. I can go back to comments on the 7300 again, interestingly. I was using the built-in USB sound card interface for JS8Call, and I noticed similar problems to other radios, traditional radios, where if you're transmitting in the middle of the audio passband, you get full power out. If you're injecting a lower frequency audio or a higher frequency audio, your average audio power decreases because of the frequency of the tones and the position in the passband. So you set your audio level for whatever power you want in the middle of the passband. You then have a station calling right down the bottom of the passband. You try and call back. your transmit level is then out. So you may produce 20 watts when you're in the sweet spot, go right down low on the band, and suddenly you're producing 5 watts output, and you need to readjust your transmit levels to get the power back up to 20 watts at the extremities of the band. And I know JS8Call can do the split thing where it's always running the radio in split so that the audio is injected in the sweet spot of the band, which is great and fine, and it works. But on an SDR, I wasn't expecting that behavior. I was expecting the audio to be injected and not go through any of these weirdo filters when in data mode. I thought what you transmit would just... I'm guessing it's audio. It's still audio. I'm comparing it with the Hermes, where you're just giving it the IQ signals and it just does magic, and it always produces a consistent power level. If you're running 1 watt, it's 1 watt regardless of the audio frequency. So yeah, that's another thing. I'm not seeing any responses here to the retro call sign. Let's go down to normal in case some people don't listen to all speeds. And I'm going to do another heartbeat to the retro net call sign. But yeah, I'll stop this broadcast soon. I've been talking for probably far too long, over an hour, and half of that has been waffle and criticism of an ICOM 7300, which otherwise I'm generally happy with. I sound like I'm complaining all the time, but I think these are issues. Small issues, and the radio otherwise is awesome, but they're small issues that have bugged me, so I think it's important to report on these things. But yeah, is anyone listening to at retro? Incidentally, we have a retro group on Facebook as well. I think it's called Retro Ham Net. Probably could be called, renamed to something a bit more appropriate, but there we've got a lot of people running Packet, a lot of people doing weird things with old computers. We've got Atari ST users, Commodore 64 users. I've had discussions on there before about using an Amstrad CPC to do Packet, and I've experimented writing, not Packet, SSTV. I've even experimented writing Amstrad SSTV software in Amstrad Basic, and I almost had it working, but you can't do the timings in Basic. Some instructions take longer because it's Basic, it's not assembler. And my Z80 assembler is not as good. But anyway, we've got people doing really cool, fun stuff with old machines. And yeah, we have this Facebook group. It's not particularly active, but when it is active, it's interesting stuff. So we have the retro group on JS8Call. We have Retro Hamnet on Facebook. We have a couple of Packet radio groups on Facebook, which is modern Packet, or modern. I'm talking TNCs and Direwolf and the Linux kernel AX25 tools, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Retro Hamnet group is specifically for ancient technology, 8-bit micros, and doing weird things. So yeah, there's no responses to retro on JS8Call on 40 meters. But make it active, get on there, call the group, transmit something interesting about old machines if you're interested in that. Yeah, and one last thing I will do. I keep seeing people on the groups, even on JS8, FT8, saying that JS8 is, or FT8 is not a low power mode. It's a low signal mode, and you don't need to be running 5 watts. You won't get anywhere with 5 watts. It's a low signal mode, but you can still, you know, people are running their linears with 300 watts, 500 watts, kilowatt. And let's, right, JS8, I'll send a normal heartbeat. I have very low noise floor. You can't really determine it because of the preamp, the LNA amplifier on the Hermes. But I have a very, very low noise floor. I have a very, very good receive. I know people say, you say, oh, I can work everything I can hear on 5 watts. Well, that doesn't mean anything because maybe you can't hear very much. I tell you, here, I can hear everything that my antenna will let me hear. And I can hear a lot. I mean, people will still say, oh, yes, you say your antenna can receive everything, but it could still be a crap antenna. Well, it is just a dipole. It's not a beam, but I have zero noise. It's like being in a field in the middle of the UK with no pylons anywhere. It's really, really quiet. I have the house here, but there's no noisy switch mode power supplies. The neighbours are a reasonable distance away, and there's no plasma TVs. We don't have power line networking typically in use here. It's a quiet country. So I'll probably now make a fool of myself, but I'm only running 5 watts. I know a lot of people are running a lot more, but I'll just do a heartbeat on JS8. I can even switch to FT8 if needed. And by the way, my antenna is not great on 40. The SWR is about 2.5 to 1. I'm running a small LDG ATU just on 40 meters on the Hermes. The Hermes is perfectly fine delivering power into a poor load, but I like to just keep things sane. And yeah, not strain the finals, the PA, any more than I have to in the Hermes. So I'll probably make a fool of myself now. Normally I can, with 5 watts, I can work everything I can hear, pretty much. There is an exception to that, and that's UK stations, where the noise floor is typically very high, and I'm just lost down in the noise. But generally, I can work everything I can hear with 5 watts. And of course, now I try and demonstrate this, no one is going to reply. I was hoping people would reply with my SNR, signal to noise ratio, and I could demonstrate their signal to noise ratio here with a very, very low noise floor, and their reported signal to noise for myself. But the few stations I see here, well, there's a few heartbeats, but mostly they're in QSO, which is good to see. There's someone running a FT818 there, PA3 ATX. Yeah, I may have to show this another time. The band is not particularly great. I wonder if these not hearing me. EI2 GYB. Let's ping him a request for signal report. Did I select that or did I not? I think I selected the wrong one. So yeah, EI2GYB, I'm not sure how much power he's running, but he's currently 0 dB to me. So maybe conditions are not great, and maybe my 5 watts is not going to be heard. So most of these stations are running probably 6 dB more or higher than me. But if he's 0 dB here and he's running more power, then I'm going to be down possibly between -6 and -18 or something dB to him. So yes, poor example, but generally My node is up 24/7. I normally have good coverage of Europe. I can normally work everything I can hear. I get messages left on my node for other people. As I say, it's generally up. So this is not a great example, but another day, maybe on when the conditions are slightly better, I can demonstrate on FT8 or something that the low power, the QRP really is not a problem at all. But of course, the SNR reports are meaningless anyway, because I've worked stations in the UK and I know they have high noise floors. I know that, you know, if they give me a plus 3 dB report, or not even that, if they give me like a minus 12 dB report, I know that's minus 12 dB against their noise floor. And I know that their noise floor is maybe traditionally on a signal meter, is maybe plus 6 dB. So, sorry, plus 6 S points. So if you're competing against that level of noise, then minus 12 dB, hang on, 6 dB S point, I'm still about S4. At their end, I'm just swamped by their local noise floor. So you've got to keep in mind, I mean, SNR, the signal to noise ratio is a better comparison, but it's still in relation to something. It's still in relation to their noise floor. And it's one of the things that bugs me on SSB is you'll speak to someone and they'll say, oh, you're S something, but I have S9 noise. It's like, well, that's meaningless. If you have S9 noise, you, at least on SSB, you can't meaningfully hear anything below that. So it's more useful to back your RF gain down so that you're getting a meter reading of S0 or thereabouts on the... I mean, that's an extreme example. Say you've got S3 noise, back the RF gain down because you can't hear anything below that anyway. So then when you give someone a signal report, you're saying, yeah, you're S5 above my noise floor. It's no good saying you're S5 against some imaginary receiver noise floor, which is completely... It's never going to mean anything. But I'm just moaning now. Yeah, the receiver noise floor is much lower than you'd realistically ever experience. So the signal, the S reading is a bit irrelevant unless you adjust it against something, which normally should be your noise floor. So I'm lucky here. I'm in the middle of Finland. I can have my RF gain on maximum and I have nothing reading on my S meter, which is how it should be. There is a noise floor which is higher, obviously higher than the receiver noise floor, but when I disconnect the antenna and attach the antenna, there's an audible increase in noise, but there's no indicated increase on noise on the S meter. I haven't really looked at the spectrum scope on the 7300. That's interesting, actually. Probably no one is listening to this. I don't think there's any viewers currently, but I'll download this and put it on YouTube afterwards, and then I can bore you to death on YouTube as well. But I have the antenna connection here. Right, so I'm going to switch. Right, I can't remember how to adjust the waterfall gain. Is it YS? Or is that something else? No, it is. Right, okay. And the lag is not helping here. So that's my... Well, you can see it on the JS8Call waterfall as well. Let's see. If I disconnect the antenna... What's this reading here? On JS8Call... It's probably better if I go to a different part of the band, a quiet point of the band. Right. Yeah, so this, I vaguely calibrated the S meter on Quisk. It's very, very roughly calibrated, so don't read too much into it, but it's reading minus 100 dB, thereabouts, minus 102 dB. if I now disconnect the coax, and I've now got a signal right in the middle of the bit that I was using as a reference point. I know I could reduce the bandwidth, which would help, because it's very wide at the moment, 4,800. But let's try and do this quickly using a wide bandwidth, because it's actually quite a good comparison. Minus 103 dB. I'll now disconnect the coax, and we'll see what the difference is. There, coax disconnected. It's now dropped to minus 107 dB. So that's the noise floor with the antenna here. What was it? Minus 103 to minus 108. That's 5 dB. 5 dB difference. But between the noise floor of the receiver, the Hermes in this case, and the noise floor of my antenna. I feel like that's showing off, but I have two neighbours, well, three neighbours. Relatively close neighbours, and another neighbour slightly further away. But that's the noise floor. I'm really quite impressed with that. That's really good to see. And it's even lower on 20 meters. Of course, at this time of night, it's going to be pointless doing anything on 20. Although it does make me curious while I'm here. Oh, I need to disconnect the ATU. That should be in bypass, and I'm going to send a heartbeat. And let's just see. Oh, I'm not in full duplex, that's why. I was worrying then why it wasn't showing anything. I didn't see the power output on 20 or the SWR. But I think the band is fairly dead. Let's try again. Right, so SWR at this part of the band is 1.5 to 1, and we've got 6.2 watts output from the Hermes SDR. Yeah, it's a 5-watt radio, but it does a little bit better on some bands. I know some people reduce the drive power to keep it to 5 watts, but it's a LDMOS output. And to be honest, you can drive it full power into a very bad load, and there's not been any reports of failures as far as I'm aware. And it does have a thermal cutout as well. So, right, so there's no activity on 20. But I suspect we have a certain mic F06BNK/LA listening on 80. I think activity on JS8Call on 80 is picking up. But let's see. Oh, SWR on this part of 80 is 2 to 1, and the power's dropped down to 2 watts as a consequence. But yeah, I'm using a trap dipole, and it works very, very well. But 80 meters is the lowest band it works, and as a consequence of the traps, the bandwidth is a little bit narrow. And I don't see any activity on 80, which is kind of surprising. Let me just tune that. Right. I don't think that will make much difference, but it will on my power output. Let's try a heartbeat again. I'm really expecting Mike to hear me. I think he was testing switching to 80 meters in the evenings, trying to increase a bit of activity on the 80 meter band. But it is possible that he's not listening. And saying that, I'm not seeing any other 80 meter activity either. I'm seeing some weird radar or other over the horizon type radar effects on the waterfall on Quisk. The joys of living next to Russia. Yeah. So the only band I can currently see activity on is 40. And I wonder when F06BNK/LA. I wonder when he was last heard on the band on 40. I wonder if he did switch to 80 this evening. I mean, this is useful because I'm going through some of this and it shows some of the functionality of JS8. Maybe I should do a proper tutorial at some point. But wow, if you've stuck with me for 1 hour 27, I think you deserve a beer. People say that JS8Call is... Well, no, they don't. People aren't aware of JS8Call, but people say that FT8 is like watching paint dry. And I guess this is like watching someone else watch paint dry. Because you're not even in the driving seat, you're just watching me. But maybe it's useful, maybe not, I don't know. I guess I should really edit this down before uploading it to YouTube. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'm like Colin from What We Do in the Shadows, and I'm a... What does he call it? Energy vampire. Bore people to death. So G0BHX has heard F06BNK recently. Although 7 hours ago. Okay, well, I'm out of beer. I've bored you to death. Maybe there's been some interesting stuff. Maybe there hasn't. I guess really I should... I've learnt in future I should set agenda or a focus. Do maybe a 20-minute or half-an-hour session. And then close down, keep it focused. But I mean, what I would like to do is have regular sessions on JS8, maybe 1 day a week, 1 evening a week, and maybe get a bit of a net going, and then people can see their signals coming in on my screen on the stream. Maybe it would be kind of fun, I don't know. Don't know what other people think, but anyway, if you've stuck with me, it's an hour and a half, which is crazy. Thank you, and see you again. I'll try and keep this a bit more focused in future. So 73s for now, from Oscar Hotel 3, Sierra Papa November. 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.